And welcome to episode 7 of Creature Comforts, a spinoff series of the Straight Chilling podcast. I'm your host, Soju, and on this show, we love to explore the fringes of horror and all things horror adjacent. Today, we are going to be talking about The Butterfly Effect from 2004, starring showboy Ashton Kutcher. This is a film that has a ton of dark elements in it, actually. I feel like anyone who's going to have seen this before is going to say, like, oh my God, I haven't thought about that film in forever, and to not remember exactly how dark it is. I also wanted to bring up this movie because I feel like it is a movie that could easily have been forgotten if you weren't born around the era like it came out, or like if you weren't growing up in the era that it came out in. And I feel like it's easily forgotten, but has a lot of really interesting ideas. I think it has some really solid performances. And it's one of those kind of like mind bending films that has a decent amount of horror elements in it and kind of toes that line pretty well. But before we get too far into it, let me go ahead and introduce our guest for tonight. All right. And from the Plug It Up podcast, I am so excited to have her to myself tonight. Get those boys out of the way. It is Caitlin from Plug It Up. Welcome, Caitlin.
Thanks for having me. It's just me and you tonight, babe.
Woo! Finally.
Yeah.
Been counting down the days. Because we just had an episode last week, but I had to share you a little bit with the
It's a
boys.
bit crowded, wasn't it? But
Yeah. I need some alone time. But yeah, Caitlin, real quick, you're a hot commodity these days. You're all over the
Ow.
place. I'm worried that next time I won't be able to get you on. So go ahead and tell us all about your podcast and everything that you're doing so everyone can check out all the amazing work that you're doing right now.
Well, thank you. And Straight Chilling and affiliates will always be my top priority. So
Woo.
there will always be
All
time for
right.
y'all.
All right.
Plug It Up is the podcast that I do. It's a horror movie podcast about the monstrous feminine. So looking at sort of like gender tropes in horror. Started 2 years ago, coming up on 2 years exactly, with monstrous menstruation, with movies like Carrie and Ginger Snaps, where a girl gets her period and becomes a monster. Then dipped into monstrous motherhood with movies like Rosemary's Baby, and then have just gone full in with the monstrous feminine. So some scary ladies and spooky ooky gender stuff, and it's been a lot of fun. I've had you on for 3 episodes now by the time
Has
this
it
comes
been
out.
3 already? Wow. Time
Yeah.
is flying. I can't believe we've been working together for a while now.
I know, I love it. It's been the best.
Yeah. And one thing I like about your podcast too is you do amazing movie reviews that focus
Thanks.
around those topics like Ready or Not and stuff like that I was listening to recently. But also I really enjoyed, so another one I was listening to recently was the countdown, or well, not countdown, but y'all were covering like the people you love to hate or people you maybe you
Yes.
shouldn't hate and stuff. That was really fun. I really loved that episode.
I love a listicle type of vibe.
Yeah.
There's one coming out at the time of this recording tomorrow, and it's on the best and worst remakes in horror.
Nice.
But now we're like, oh, we got to do like best horror themes and scores, best intro scenes, like
Yeah.
favorite dance numbers in horror. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
I definitely enjoyed that episode, and I'm looking forward to like more like list episodes. I think like there's just something about lists that's why they're so damn popular
Look,
all the time.
love a countdown. I listen to
Yeah.
y'all's year ender because that's like a
Oh, yeah.
countdown in its own right, a few
Yeah.
times. So
Yeah, so good stuff. I love
Thanks.
listening to your stuff, and every time you feature too, I always try to check it out because you are amazing. You have a fantastic perspective, so that's why I was
Thank you.
excited to get you on here.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
So, speaking of which, today we are talking about The Butterfly Effect from 2004. This is an American science fiction thriller film written and directed by Eric Bress and J. Mackay Gruber. That sounds really fake. It stars Ashton Kutcher,
Good.
Amy Smart, Eric Stoltz, William Lee Skye, Ethan Suplee. He's in here pre getting ripped out of his mind. And the plot synopsis is Evan suffers blackouts during significant events in his life. As he grows up, he finds a way to remember these lost memories and a supernatural way to alter his life by reading his journal. Caitlin, would you, spoiler free, would
Well,
you
free.
recommend people check this out? And what does this movie mean to you? What's your history with this?
Speaking of that, yeah, horror remakes listicle episode that I just did, I feel like I have a bias, like a very tender feeling for a lot of the movies that came out around this time, this like 2003 to 2008 time frame. It's when I was in high school. I graduated in 2007, and I guess that's when I could see horror movies like in the theater by myself. And I remember being so excited for this to come out because I like the supernatural thriller sort of vibe of this and all of the movies of that era. So I like it. I think maybe I'm suffering a little bit of like, I don't know, romanticization of that time period in my life. But I remember being so excited for it to come out. I liked it. I hadn't seen this in a really long time. But when I cut it back on to watch this to record with you, I was like, oh, yeah. I was like so stoked for this to come out. And I still really like it. But I don't know that everybody feels that way. So this one hits for me. It might not hit for everyone, but I would recommend checking it out. It's a cool concept.
Yeah, you and I are the same. So, the same kind of feeling is I was also like around the same age at that time. And I feel like kind of lucky in some way, but because I know that that era is not known for good cinema typically. So I'm glad that I can have the lens to see some of these movies through where it gives more of a positive sheen to it because I also like see it through nostalgia goggles and remember watching them as a teen and
Yeah.
the feelings. Even this one,
I was like,
I
bro,
was,
it's so deep.
yeah.
High school
Oh,
me was
the
like, you'll never
love.
guess. Yeah.
I'll do anything for
Yeah.
love. um,
Big
so
time.
yeah. So I agree. I'm curious though. This came out almost 20 years ago now.
Fuck.
And I know. And I feel like this might be kind of like a under the radar for people outside our realm of, being teenagers watching this. And so for that, I would say, yeah, I think this is worth checking out. I feel like it's like mostly not talked about or acknowledged in like huge ways these days as far as film
Yeah.
goes. It's not like the best thing. It's got some problems that we'll pick apart a little bit, but I think it's got a pretty interesting concept. And I think, people who didn't grow up at the same time as us might find it interesting. So yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with you.
It's of its time, but as long as you can like reconcile that and enjoy it for what it is, then I think you'll have a good time.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and drop the spoiler warning so we can get down and dirty with it. All right. So, the whole premise of this show is to kind of explore the fringes of horror and all things horror adjacent, of course. So I have these questions for coulda, woulda, shoulda that will kind of help us like ease into that conversation. So, Caitlin, we have prepared these questions beforehand. I wanted to ask you. The first one is, what subgenre of horror could you put this film into?
I would call this a supernatural thriller just
Okay.
because I guess the only supernatural element is that he's time jumping,
Yeah.
but it
That's a
still
big
counts.
one,
It
though.
still counts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, that's the thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
It
is
counts.
the thing.
And he's retaining the knowledge, as he jumps through. So yeah, there's
Uh-huh.
plenty of supernatural stuff going on there, but supernatural thriller, I would say. What about
Yeah.
you?
I picked a psychological horror.
That's a good one too.
Yeah, so I picked that one just because. So I always try to like write out these because as I'm like exploring these little subgenres, I'm always like, what separates them? Why, who's like categorizing these things? But so psychological horror
It's
says
you.
not. Yeah, maybe yeah. In an alternate time. Um, it is not about what you see on screen, but how it makes you feel. The genre plays tricks on the viewer's minds by creating paranoia. A viewer's emotional state is heavily influenced by psychological horror. since this type of horror can feel a little too real compared to other subgenres, like with monsters and stuff like that. People may walk away feeling uneasy. Now, one thing I will say about this is even though it's been a really long time since I've seen it, it has kind of like stuck in my mind as being like, that's kind of fucked up. Um, and actually kind of got more fucked up when I rewatched it. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is kind of more fucked up than I thought. So that's
Well, and at the
wild.
time, like when it came out, I thought like this is a marker in history. Like
Uh,
the butterfly effects. Like
yeah.
they thought that like something as simple as the butterfly flapping its wings. I was like, bro, oh my God. Like it's like
Oh,
we're never gonna like
shit.
it's gonna change cinema. I don't know why I thought that, but I remember thinking it's like groundbreaking.
Yeah.
And then watching it as an adult this time, I was like, oh my God, this is brutal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like made this list of like things that are really fucked up in this movie that I want to go over later.
Yeah.
Um, all right, cool. So the second question would be, what one element would you change in this film to make it more of a horror film?
I was thinking about this one a little bit. A lot of the horrors that we already have in this film are real life horrors, like abuse and really significant
Yeah.
trauma, and sort of like the dangers of, I guess, like society. And those are horrific enough in and of themselves, I think. But if you wanted to take this in a more conventional horror direction, I got to thinking about this time. I don't remember what podcast it was. I think it might have been Duncan Trussell Happy Hour, which might not be in existence anymore. But I remember listening to this guy guest on the podcast and talk about having done DMT. And when he
Mm.
was on DMT, he could like see demons, like it just like he could see them. But when he came back down off of the DMT, he could still see them.
Oh
And his life is like
no.
plagued with what he perceives as demons around him,
Oh
which is
no.
really scary. Like I don't
Yeah.
even believe that kind of stuff, but that's enough to make me be like, well, I'm never doing DMTs.
Yeah. Oh
So
no.
I didn't know if like maybe there could be this like when he does these sort of like time fractures, when Ashton Kutcher's character does these time fractures and jumps, if there's like these, let's say, like evil or demonic forces that make a lot of these terrible things happen and these traumas happen. Maybe he's more aware of them. He's aware of them in the sense that they're happening, but maybe he could like see more of the evil in like a personified way.
Yeah. Adding like
It was hard. It was a hard question, but it was a good one.
yeah, adding like a little supernatural element to that. There have been things too where like not necessarily with time jumping, but with like maybe teleporting or something where
Right.
yeah, like the in between that you go to is like a form of hell or like another
Yes.
dimension that's where you're traveling through. So that's actually a really really good answer. I really like that. Mine was so I put so as we talked or hinted a little bit, there's like a lot of fucked up things in here. And I actually wrote, I feel like all the pieces are here to have a more even like grittier type of horror film, or even just like a more extreme type of thriller like you would get with like a Seven or something.
Oh,
And I put the director. I think I think the director just didn't I think a lot of the problems that this film has is from like a director standpoint. Um and I feel like somebody could take the same exact story today and make it in a way that felt a lot more horrific, just with what's already here, honestly.
I think so too. And there's also this sort of like theme of the like power of love and this sort of like current of, what carries him through all of these dimensions and time possibilities is this love he has. And we even get a monologue at one point that like teeters on, like, I don't need a heartthrob storyline for this movie, actually. So
Yeah.
maybe eliminating some of that, leaning harder into the horrific elements. It was sweet for the time. And they weren't not going to capitalize on like heartthrob era Ashton
Yeah,
Kutcher.
good
So I
call.
get what they were doing, but if they took out a little bit of that and leaned harder into them and the scary stuff, I can definitely see it having more of a reputation in the horror community.
Yeah, and that's gonna be an interesting later thing too, because this film does have 2 endings, and, like, I wanna talk about, like, how the different endings are approached because they do kinda touch on that aspect a little bit. And I will say that watching this as a teen, since you brought that up, I definitely remembered this film having more of a kind of impactful love story because they do hammer it home so much. But as watching it as an adult, I was like, why is he doing this? Like, what is this person like? They don't
Yeah,
barely know each other. What are
I
you
know.
talking
It's like,
about?
you're coming off a little weird, buddy.
Yeah.
Like, I
I haven't seen her since she was like 12 years old. Calm
he's
it
like,
down,
hey,
brother.
remember when we were like abused together? And it's like,
Yeah.
buddy, you can't
Yeah.
lead with that. Like,
Mm.
easy, easy.
Remember when we had one kiss 10 years ago in the theater and I haven't seen you since? It's like, damn, you're gonna fuck up the whole world for that shit. Chill it out,
Oh
brother.
no.
Yeah. So, yeah. But things you think when you're a teenager, oh my God, what a
Oh,
beautiful
it's totally
love story.
romanticized. I was like, oh my God. Yeah.
All right, cool. And one more. It's going to be if people like this movie, what horror film should they check out?
My answer to this is very much in line with what we were talking about earlier in terms of other movies of the era that maybe don't have similar themes of like time fracture and jumping between dimensions and realities, but more of the way it made me feel. And one that came to mind for me was Gothica, which is indeed a
Yeah.
supernatural thriller of that time period with Halle Berry. Um, I like that one. Watching it as an adult, you see it with new eyes, and you're like, "Oh, that wasn't as good as perhaps I remembered it to be." But Gothica came to mind if you want more of like a ghosty type of perspective, but the same feel, the same like bluish tones that permeated movies from this era. And then also because apparently I can't stop thinking about it, Swim Fan, which is like not even in the same sort of like subgenre of what this is about, but in terms of like unease and just sort of like, working with that same sort of age time period of like late teens and just all the high emotions that come with it. I love Swim Fan. So,
I've never seen Swim Fan, so
oof.
maybe I will check that out since you recommended. I have seen Gothica. It's been a long time though. It kind of lives in that same space in my mind where I saw it in the theater, I think, when it came out.
Yeah. The poster was so iconic. I remember like Halle Berry, like
Yeah.
arms pressed up against the glass, and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be crazy.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it since the theater, to be honest. Ooh, maybe I'll check that one out too. Good
Yeah.
recommendations. I picked Triangle. Have you ever seen Triangle?
I haven't. I was looking it up. I think y'all covered it on Straight Chilling, maybe.
We did. Feels like it's been years ago now, but maybe it was just a month ago. I don't know. Time, what is it? So yeah, Triangle is cool and Time Crimes also. I kind of went more with the mind bendy aspect, the like, oh my God, what's going on here? What is
What
time?
if?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, Triangle, I think, is a really good film just all around, and it has the mind bendy aspect. Time Crimes is like less of a good film, but has some like interesting time jumping aspects and like, who are you and what does it do when you jump time and stuff? So, that one's interesting, at least.
Yeah.
So,
It
yeah,
also reminds me of Synchronic, which came out recently ish, like a few years ago, has
yeah,
sort of similar. I mean, that one's more of the changes on a global perspective than sort of like this guy's relationship with this girl. But
yeah.
it's got a similar vibe. But that one leads like more sci fi horror, which is also up my alley. So,
Well, speaking of that, that's a great transition because I wanted to start with the movie review of this opening up as like the chaos theory aspect of it all, of like really like what this movie's core idea kind of is, I guess, which is it has been said that something as small as the flutter of a butterfly's wing can ultimately cause a typhoon halfway around the world. So, as you were mentioning, like in other films, they actually, you know,
yeah.
play more into that idea of like bigger, aspects changing. But yeah, this is mostly just like I changed one thing in my life. It changed kind of the people around me's life and stuff, but not the world. It's not changing the world here.
Right. Which I mean, and to be fair, I think especially if this movie is marketed to teenagers, which it was effectively done to us at the time, that
Yeah,
is kind of what your world is like you and the people
true.
around you. So I
True.
can see where that resonated. And when I think about what would I have changed, or like what could have been different had X, Y, and Z happened or not happened. I do think, like a lot of us think about like my own personal life, but
Sure.
I wouldn't mind seeing a butterfly effect movie on a grander scale.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. But also too, like I just so happened to see a meme the other day that it was just like, this is kind of a tangent, but it was like so many people think about time travel and think if you go back in time, it makes me think of Homer Simpson, actually. If you go back in time and you change one little thing, it'll have like this huge, 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 huge impact. But in our day to day, we're not worried about like stepping on a beetle because it might then ruin the world 1,000 years from now. So yeah, I don't know how much things would actually change, especially if you're Ashton Kutcher, but you know,
Well, if
it's
you're
fun.
this guy and you like experience like 8 or 9 significant traumas, and it's and you're like 12, I don't know, but yeah, similar thought process here. Yeah,
Yeah, that was the thing that was kind of blowing me away with this movie watching it this time. I don't really know how to fix it, but Ashton Kutcher does not come in until 30 minutes in.
yeah,
Um, and it does a lot of setup, which it kind of has to for the way it wants to approach the story of like you dip back into your life. But yeah, the first 30 minutes is we split even between like actors. At one point, he's 7 years old. He's molested. He meets these kids for the first time, Kaylee and Tommy, brother and sister. And then we jump to like the 13, where some shit goes down. They do some vandalism. They kill this woman and her baby, which was really fucked up. I forgot about that.
me too.
And a dog gets burned alive, and that's really fucked up. And so yeah, Ashton Kutcher doesn't come 30 minutes in. How are you feeling about it, this watch around?
I totally forgot about that. Like I mean, I knew what the video was about, but I guess I figured that we got him earlier on in the movie than we did.
Yeah.
So I do remember pausing the movie to see like where I was and like in the movie's time frame, be like, where is he? Like, what are we doing? But you're right. Like it necessitates all that backstory because not only do we have to come back to it, we have to reference it and sort of be like, oh yeah, but this happened, and what if we changed it? So like I get why they did it, but I was like, oh shit, where is he?
Yeah, me too. And it's weird too because like they show all the really like kind of fucked up things at first and like some more fucked up things happen later when he tries to change them. But it's like considering all the things that went down, I guess outside of Lenny, everybody's life is like okay, it's not the worst, that we get, but, like, in the first iteration, I try to, like, list out we
Yeah.
go through, like, 5 different realities, I was like, "I'm gonna lose track of what everybody's doing during these times." So, when we start out, Evan, he's, like, a good student, he's got this one friend, and he doesn't have, like, a big social group or whatever, but he's, like, really interested in his studies, he's got a good relationship with his mom, he's doing alright, and it just so happens that he always keeps these journals and he like finds, oh my God, like I'm warping or some shit one night when he's trying to get it on with the lady. Um,
Also,
kills the
just
vibe.
don't do that. She's like, read me your childhood diary. Like,
Yeah.
I cannot imagine a scenario in which I would feel bold enough or comfortable enough or have the desire to to have someone read that to me. Terrible move, lady.
Especially because he starts off and then it turns out that it's really fucked up. It just so happens to be really
Oh my
fucked up. And
God.
she can like, yeah, keep going. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you just like talking about? Kids getting molested. What are you talking
I
about?
was like, ma'am, no,
I don't think this is gonna be good.
you know,
So, yeah, I agree. That was super weird. On the flip side, though, Shaboy Thumper is going to town on not
Thumper do be getting laid this whole movie.
yeah, and like I'm later. I got to give half star for the Gothiabos, of course, because there's more than just the Gothiabos. But yeah, I kind of forgot about those aspects too, and even the kind of character of Thumper is interesting. Like why he's even kind of in this film, especially the way he is. There's not like a specific reason for it, but it's interesting. Like
Yeah.
it's different. I don't know.
They kind of have him as one of those background characters that's like he serves, especially in the fraternity universe, that it's like, oh,
Mm,
like we would never have been friends, like, you know.
true.
And I just appreciate that they went really hard stylistically with him, and they were like, nope, we're gonna give him the big spikes.
Yeah.
He's gonna
Yeah.
be this like big boy frat dude or big boy goth dude, and he's gonna hate frat guys. And I was like, you know what? Go for it.
Yeah, and
Love
he's
to
gonna
see
get
Thumper
laid all the time. Yeah.
constantly. Yeah,
Yeah.
Riz for days. Like he's so good.
It was an interesting character, and that's why when I was, like, watching I'm not necessarily bothered that he didn't have, like, a bigger role or any kind of bigger changes. It was just interesting, different,
Yeah,
that all the choices they made to make that character the way he is, but I like him. I like him as a character.
yeah. Love a little goth representation.
Oh, yeah, you gotta do it,
Yeah,
especially in the teenage years, when he
yeah.
does the whole, break the pool cue thing or whatever and
Yes,
stands
yeah,
out for himself to all the frat guys, that's like an
yeah.
iconic
I remember being
outsider
like, oh
moment. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
Thumper, yes.
"Fuck you,
Go off,
frat
King.
guys.
Yeah.
I'm 12."
I'm like, you're getting kicked out of that bar now if you break the
I don't
pool cue.
Yeah. I don't even know what a frat is. But yeah, so in the first iteration, everybody's doing okay, except I guess Lenny's not. Lenny is in this kind of like state of arrested development, and he just kind of like makes airplanes all the time while everybody else has kind of moved on with their life. Now, once Evan starts prying, then Kaylee ends up committing suicide when she kind of like he awakens the kind of molestation memories and stuff like that. And then, her brother starts kind of threatening Evan. So then it kind of goes bad. Um, but I was going to ask you, we have 5 different iterations here. And I think they do a pretty good job of showing like, oh shit, it kind of spirals out of control pretty quick. To where it's kind of hard to go back. But
Yeah,
is there any point where you feel like you would just be like, okay, this this reality is like okay enough. It's like good enough, but I might need to like stop doing this. Do you think there was ever
yeah.
a point for Evan in this film where he could have done that?
Well, what's hard is it's like the before time, like before he started time jumping. That's probably the most like net neutral
Yeah.
scenario because I absolutely hate when he's a frat dude and Kaylee's in a sorority and they're like really mean. I was like, no, that's not what I want from this.
Yeah.
And then I kind of enjoy the one where he is an amputee and like he jumped on the mailbox to save the lady and her baby. But he's also, I mean, like he hates it. Like he is miserable. But I feel like the wannabe martyr in me would be like, okay, I got to stop. Everyone else is happy. But then his mom's dying. I don't know. It's really hard.
And that was actually a smart aspect of that because I was feeling the same thing. I was like, okay, I was remembering it as the movie was playing. I was like, okay, yeah, you got to stop here, right? Like, this is the one, yeah, it really sucks for you. And he, even in that time, tries to commit suicide as
Right.
opposed to moving forward so that everybody else can be happy. And, that's
Yeah.
admirable. But then he finds out about his mom. I was like, okay, that's a good little twist there to
Yeah.
make you have to keep
A
going.
good motivation. Yeah.
Yeah, and the only thing I was, like, kinda disappointed going back, I didn't notice it at the time, but when I was making the list of, like, what everybody's doing, I was like, they totally left out Lenny in the second timeline. He's not in, like, where they're happy and in a frat happy where they're in a frat. He's not there at all. Like, we don't see anything about Lenny.
That's not the one where he's like institutionalized, right?
No, that's a third one, like,
Right.
when so
Okay.
that's the one where he accidentally kills Tommy or no, he
Right.
kills Tommy with the shiv and then Kaylee has the fucked up face and she's a prostitute.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and the second one where, like, Evan wakes up and he thinks, like, he fixed everything, he wakes up, he's in a frat, he's with Kaylee, she's good, and the only kinda negative is, oh, Tommy was abused more by his dad, and that made him even more fucked up, but, yeah, we don't get anything at all from Lenny, which is kinda weird.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah. I do like that we got more of Lenny throughout because I ended up really wanting to see where they took that character.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were just like, he never became friends with them. In that one, it's like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, he does in the one. Oh, well, so in the one, if well, there's two endings. In one ending, he takes the thumper role. He becomes Evan's best friend. If I don't know how.
Yes, yeah. It's like they end up growing up together and they go to college together because Lenny's not
Yeah.
traumatized, I
Yeah.
guess.
They just because let's get into the endings later. That's a whole another thing to unpack. But yeah, so I was kind of disappointed that like we were like there's this whole because that's the biggest timeline actually, and that was a kind of problem I had is pacing. Um, Already talking about the beginning of this film, like Ashton Kutcher doesn't come in till 30 minutes. Where is he? But then also too, when he's going back and fixing things, they spend a lot of time on this very first fixing where he goes into the frat. He then kills Tommy and then goes to jail for murder and then is
Dude,
like
that one is so
raped.
long.
Yeah,
Dude,
it's
and I
so
was like,
long.
I'm gonna have to fast forward to this like prison rape. I was like, this
Yeah.
is a lot. And I was like, oh my God, I remember being like, I know we have other timelines to visit. Chop chop, we gotta move on. Like, I can't stay
Yeah.
in the prison.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That one was super long, and, like, that's a pacing issue, I think, with this movie, and I think that's
Yeah.
kind of like a director problem again. I don't think you need that much prison.
No, I feel like it was all leading up to that one line when in the diner he's going to look for Kaylee, but in this universe she doesn't work there. But the lady's like, just get out, like referring to, him guarding
Yeah.
his plate, like when he eats his food. And it's like, I was like, oh, that's a fun line, but like we needed maybe two shots in the prison. But
Yeah.
it's like, I can see where maybe since that's the first one that they explored it so long, I can see where the argument can be made like, oh, we have to establish like, how in depth these changes can go and like all the different ways that your life would have changed. But I can also see where the director was like, maybe this was his first idea for it. And then he was like, what if I added more?
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
bunch of other realities. So
Yeah.
like it could have been like a mini series and that was episode 1. And then like the other ones could have been episodes 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. But yeah, the first one it takes up so much time.
That's a really good call, actually. I didn't think about this as maybe being made as a mini series where each episode he's trying to fix it, and you as the viewer are like hoping, oh, change this thing. What's it going to change this week? And these little aspects that you could go back to previous episodes and see, like we're left alone or we're in the background. That would
That'd be a
actually
cool
probably be
character
really
study for
cool.
actors too. Like, where could I
Yeah.
take this character if, she became a sex worker? Where could I take this character if he became like a born again
Yeah.
campus
Christian.
crusader or
Yeah.
whatever? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. And one of the time, I think at the very last timeline, Tommy graduates and it says class of 2000. I was like, what is happening? No. Oh my God. I
And then
am.
Kaylee's like, yes, brother, go on valedictorian. And I was like, this is weird.
People don't have cell phones. Oh my.
Get me out of here.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I think they do a pretty good job. I feel like each one should have been like paced more like closer together. But I feel like they do a good job of once Evan starts down that kind of like slippery slope, he can't stop really. And I like again coming back to Thumper that he's like the voice of reason at the beginning. He's the
Yeah.
one who's like, man, I don't think you need to be fucking with all this shit. Like you're
Grabs the
gonna
diary and he's like reading like he's like, uh-huh. Like
yeah.
this dude has so much trauma. Like it's like capital T, big time traumas that are like crimes.
Yeah.
And Thumper looks at it and he's like, maybe don't fuck with this.
Yeah, let's just burn that.
Well, my question was like, what if you get to a timeline where you didn't keep diaries? Like, what do you do then? And like the dad needs pictures, so maybe he could, but it's like, what happens if when you're a frat dude, like you were like super into lacrosse when you were in high school or something, like you just
Didn't
fucked off and
write
didn't write
'em.
diaries,
Mhm. Well, yeah, and that's another problem is they add in other elements like that because I think they want to add some richness to this lore. Like you mentioned, the dad, and ultimately he tries to use like a home movie to jump because he remembers that his dad had pictures to use it. But yeah, that's something that they don't really develop out very well, unfortunately. And also, they don't really, I guess this is kind of part of the time aspect too, of like it seems like he can only jump to these blackout
Right.
moments.
Which are
But
directly related to like horrible traumas in his life, which is like, I mean, like, I can get where you can, like, yeah, like when someone experiences a brutal trauma, they do dissociate and your brain does things to help you forget and move on. And that's where some of that stuff is buried. But I don't know how much I like that being the crux of this movie, like the crux of the mechanics of time jumping.
yeah, I agree because the first one that he jumps to is when he's young. He's 7 years old, and it's when he tells his dad, I don't know, and when he tells Kaylee's dad, like, "Don't touch her, whatever, discipline your son," which means that the whole dog situation, the whole mailbox situation should have erased at that moment. He should have
Right.
never been
Yeah.
able to jump back to that moment.
Right. Yeah.
So if they really wanted to do it right, they should have gone like from oldest to
Right. Yeah.
youngest,
Yeah.
but they
Exactly.
didn't. So that's
Yeah.
kind of not right. But
And then it's like, can you go back? Like if you run out of these however many 5 or whatever times that you jump back in time, can you start over? Like if you
yeah,
keep needing to fix stuff, like can you go back to when you were being molested as a child? Like it's just very bizarre. But
yeah, yeah. And he does one time. That's another thing they kind of fuck up, I feel like, because he then does go back to that. So he starts with the
yeah.
molestation one, the very first one, and then he does go back to that one, which is like his last one, I think. And he blows up Kaylee. That one was kinda dumb too. I was like, "Come on, what are we doing here?
I
Come
was like,
on."
wow, wasted a turn.
Yeah,
God.
yeah. But I do also then like the aspect that each time he does it, his brain is, like, hemorrhaging and
Yeah.
damaging itself, so he maybe gets dumber. That I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe.
Well, I like that his like nose is bleeding and he's got like, the like very horror. That's a very horror movie trope. Like something's going on with this dude because he has this ability and his like nose is bleeding and you're like, okay, it's taking a toll. And then we get like an actual brain scan and the doctor's like, your brain is fucked up, dude. And
Yeah.
he's like, sick, mom.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. And that's why, okay, let's talk about the endings. When you first saw this one, do you remember what ending you watched?
I remember it being the New York, or maybe not New York, but like they're in a big city and they're grown up, like the very ending. And he sees Kaylee and they just sort of pass each other without knowing each other.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the one I saw too, because I feel like I remember years later finding out that there was like a director's cut or an alternate one and just watching that ending and being like, whoa, what the fuck? And so this time it just so happened that the one I was watching just naturally had that ending in it, which have you seen the alternate
I
ending?
haven't. No, tell
Do you
me.
know what it is?
No, I want to know.
Okay, okay. So this is interesting, especially too from like a horror aspect. And yeah, okay. So it pretty much plays out in the same way. So the natural ending that happened in the theater was Evan is now in an institute, and the doctor even brings up the idea of like, Evan, there are no journals. You've been imagining this whole thing. It's how you're dealing with the trauma of Kaylee's death. And so
Yeah.
they had a kind of like a little swerve in there again, where it's like, is this real? Which they don't harp too much on, because then he does another jump and it is real or whatever. Well,
Yeah.
maybe I guess you could be like, he's fucking crazy, but I don't
Yeah.
like that.
It's just flying.
Yeah, but so he gets a home movie from his mom and jumps to a time that we've never seen before. Like they didn't show, which is a party where he first meets Kaylee
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, instead of befriending her, because she tells him, and I think one of the last ones he jumps to, like, "Oh, why did you stay with your dad?" And she's like, "Oh, because I would have had to leave you. I didn't like my dad very much, but I knew I'd have to live with my mom and I wouldn't get to see you anymore," which I thought was like, "Oh my god, she's like 7 years old.
Whose
Who's
parent like makes the
yeah,
decision that way? My
um,
friend.
yeah." So it's like, I don't know about that. So he
No.
goes back to a party and he's like, "I fucking hate you,
Yeah.
bitch," or whatever.
He's like,
And
I'll kill your whole damn family. And she's
yeah.
like,
Yeah, and then she goes to live with her mom and lives a wonderful life, and then he wakes up with Lenny as his friend, as his roommate, goes on to be successful, and then one day walking through the city, like 10 years later, he sees Kaylee, and she's hot, and she's, in a business wear, and
Yeah.
she's doing good, and so he's like, "Yeah, I did it. I
And they
fixed."
like have
Yeah, a cross
but
moment, yeah.
yeah. But that's the ending that I have.
Yeah, so that's the ending. So the director's cut ending, it starts to play out the same way. Um, and I feel like this was somewhat intended, and maybe they did the other ending for like the audiences or whatever, because the director's cut is a lot darker. So his mom mentions before he starts jumping, she said, "Oh, I always thought of you as my kind of miracle baby because I was pregnant twice before and they were both born stillborn. And then you were my third." And so what he does is he gets the home movie, but the home movie is his dad is filming his birth. So it's his mom going through the hospital as she's pregnant, about to give birth. So he jumps into himself as a baby in his mom's belly and kills himself by choking himself with the umbilical cord.
Wow.
And so it's another dead baby,
I was gonna
which is
say, wow.
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Fuck you, mom.
yeah, and then everybody else lives a happy life. And it even shows his mom, like, I guess, marrying another person and having another family, because it's passed down through his dad, the disease
Right.
or whatever.
Yeah.
So it shows his mom has like a happy ending with another husband and kids and Kaylee, and everybody grows up wonderful and having a good life. So yeah, it's similar but much darker.
Yeah, I mean, that's like an additional trauma for the mom. I mean,
Yeah.
it's also I don't know that I've ever seen a fetal suicide in a movie
Yeah,
before,
a
so
conscious
it
fetal
could
suicide. Yeah, that
yeah.
shit's
Huh.
intense.
Yeah.
Um, I
But you know what's weird? It's like that makes the other well, in the whole movie, I guess the idea that all of these terrible abuses and things happened not directly because of, but kind of because this one kid was nice to another girl. It's just like very, I don't know, it makes me like I don't like to think about that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is of the negative thing of this time period is, I covered Fight Club on this little show a couple weeks ago. A couple months ago, and I this time was still very like nihilistic, like even no matter what. So yeah, the kind of message there is no matter what kind of good you do, it actually would just be better if you were dead. And it's like, well, okay.
Easy. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
slow down.
If you just
Yeah.
killed yourself as a fetus, the world
Yeah.
would be better. You ruin
Was very
everyone's
out, you friend. And
lives.
it's like, God damn. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's very 2004. That's
Yeah.
very post-corn bullshit and Limp Bizkit bullshit.
Well, it's funny because we're in this era now, or we have been, I guess, for a little while, where like trauma is the monster, this like very A24 sort of thing. And we get like little hints of it here because trauma plays such a big part of this movie. But the messaging is more like about the nihilism, which is, it's just so funny how it comes in waves like that.
Yeah, and that's okay. So about this film being like dark and like horror adjacent and stuff, I took down a note of like all the dark moments of this, and like so like yeah, it focuses on the nihilism, but that's why I was kind of like it could be a horror film because this is like the elements of this film. This 7-year-old child watches his dad die, beat to death as he was trying to kill him. So that's
Yeah.
fucked up. The child molestation. They blow up. They literally blow up a baby. They burn a dog alive.
Yeah.
Another a 7-year-old or well, I guess they're like 12 or 13 at this time, stabs another 12-year-old. Suicide, lung cancer, baby suicide, prostitution,
Yeah.
prison rape, prison gang rape. It's like, whoa.
Indoctrination into the like white brotherhood
Yeah.
gangs of the prison system. And
Yeah.
then like also like fraternity assholes being assholes. And like it's none of it makes any, and it's all so bad. And it's
It
not a lot of
is.
shining happy moments, which, it's not like we go into horror looking for those, but
No.
it is
But
pretty bleak.
this threw like everything into the soup. Like this,
Yeah.
like
Like, if you thought
this
that
is
was
a
bad, he
chunky
was
soup.
also molested
Yeah.
on camera. And it's like,
Yeah.
fucking Christ, dude.
Yeah. Woo. And then when he tried to fix it, he blew her up.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn.
Jesus. Yeah.
And then he was raped. It's like,
And then he has
whoa.
his first kiss, but it sucks because the brother is going to kill him.
Yeah. It's
Like,
better
oh,
if you
no.
just die as a baby.
Well, I don't know. Speaking of when it's the fraternity universe and he ends up going to jail for this, when Tommy comes and attacks him, and Ashton Kutcher's character just like beats him to death with his
Yeah.
like hands, and then eventually like a tire iron or pipe or something. That is like, I was like, oh my god, this is really intense. We've seen some brutal things, and now we're seeing like extended, like aggressive brutality.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too, because that's kind of another weak element that I think they wanted to, but as we can see, there's already a lot going on in this movie. But in that, I feel like they hinted that his personality changed a little bit too, based on how he developed as a person, because we see him like he tries to hold on to his previous personality where he's like, hey, Thumper, what's up? Or he remembers everything. But then he like has a slip where he kind of abuses the frat
The
guys,
pledges
the
or whatever they're called.
pledges,
Yeah.
yeah. And then they make it seem like, oh, he slips again, and he didn't really intend to beat Tommy to death, but that version of him would have beaten Tommy to death. So, but they don't ever really do that again, I don't think.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's also, I don't know. I think the thread of him loving her, it gets like, I thought it was kind of nice throughout most of it, but when it gets to when they're in the diner and she's working as a sex worker and she's obviously got some substance use issues, and he's like, I know that you have twin moles on your thighs, and I know that you prefer the smell of skunks to flowers. I was like, oh, okay. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need this like manic pixie dream girl spiel. And then I don't know, he like proposes to her in the frat timeline, and then like
Yeah.
I was just like, oh man, I maybe they could have carried that love for them a different way. I don't know. And then he's like when he's paralyzed, which I think I told you, like he's in a wheelchair, but his legs seem fine. He just has no arms.
Just no arms. Well, yeah, you should be
You're
walking
like, get in the
around.
wheelchair. But he's like, what if you loved me? Even though she's like happy with Lenny, and it's like,
Yeah.
bro,
Yeah. The love aspect really, from an adult perspective, was really kind of like, one, it's really thin. And
yeah,
they push way too hard on the destiny and stuff like that.
yeah.
But yeah, you're right. In the timeline where like, well, she's happy, or
Yeah, if that was the goal for her to be happy,
yeah.
and if you're willing to take it on as a martyr to not be with her, but to see her happy, you could stop there. But
Also, in the fraternity like timeline, it's like if you took the Evan that existed as the person he was, and then you took this Kaylee as the person that she could have existed as, like they wouldn't have been together. He wouldn't have liked her as the person she could have naturally been. So it's like
Yeah.
what are you only attached to the Kaylee who's abused and damaged?
yeah, and it does, like you said, speak to a lot about like destiny and fate and soulmates. And,
Yeah.
that is like, I think if you had a longer platform like a series, that would be a really interesting thread to explore. I just don't know if they had enough time to do it. And this is like a 2-ish hour movie, but they have, like you said, 5 realities to sift through, a bunch of trauma to sort through. the dad, the hereditary aspect to it. So it's like, I don't know if we have time to properly explore the idea of destined soulmates in this horror adjacent movie.
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot. There's a lot going on in this movie.
They pack a lot in, to their credit, but
They do.
just probably didn't have enough time to flesh it all out.
They do. And to be fair, most of it kind of holds together. Pretty good. It holds
Yeah.
together pretty good.
Yeah, and it's held
Yeah.
on maybe by you have to suspend disbelief quite a bit in general, but at the end I was like, all right, whatever, they love each other. but,
Yeah.
but even still,
Yeah.
I was like, all right, they kind of pull it off here. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So okay, well, I think that kind of gets us into our final ratings. Unless, is there any other, would you like to bring up any other topic before we get into the final rankings?
And then the only other note I have in here is that it is someone's job as a props designer to draw scary children's pictures in horror
Yeah.
movies. And what a cool job that must be, because the one that they have little Evan draw, it's like him atop a pile of dead bodies.
From the prison, yeah. I killed all these men who raped me. It's like,
Like,
oh,
fuck.
shame. Yeah.
Yeah. But whenever I see those kinds of drawings in horror movies, and like someone in props had a great time doing that.
Yeah.
And like just really enjoyed themselves drawing this fucked up kid's picture.
Yeah. And that actually didn't really amount to anything. That was one of those ones where he was like supposed to change it and couldn't. That was the thing too.
Yeah.
They could have edited this movie down. There was no need
That's
to have
true.
all that. No
That
need.
school scene was definitely, I was like, oh, this didn't really go anywhere. But
Yeah, that one. And then the scene where he like winds up in the kitchen and he's like, I gotta fix
Right.
this. And when he doesn't, and it's like,
yeah,
okay.
I was
that
still kind of
weird.
fuzzy on that. And I was like,
Me too.
I'm sure it makes sense somehow. I just don't know how.
I don't know if it does, but yeah. All right, cool. So out of 5, Caitlin, where do you think you would rate this?
I think realistically, I'm going to land at a 3.75.
Okay.
I do really like this a lot. It's got some writing flaws. It's got some direction flaws, but it is a neat concept, and I wouldn't mind seeing it explore a little bit more. I do think the acting is decent, with what they have. They have to take on a lot of different, personas within just one character, which
Yeah.
it's cool. It's cool that they got to do that. I think the effects and the makeup are pretty good. Like, I like seeing strung out Kaylee where she's like all kind of grimy and stuff. And I like seeing like the scars that they added and those little details. I think it's pretty well done. And I'm definitely suffering from some bias with it having come out the time it did, but it is what it is. And this will hold a certain place in my heart. So
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mostly agree. I'm like, I dropped it down a little bit more. So I was going to give it a 3 out of 5. I definitely recognize some bias goes in from like growing up with this time, but I feel like I was able to see through a lot of the bias though, because I was like, okay, the romance, it doesn't really work out for me. That's kind of thin. But as I said before, I think there are all the pieces here to make a really good in-depth film that could be like this intense thriller or just potentially horror film. But I think, there's some editing choices that could be made to clean this up. I think there's some writing choices that maybe don't make a lot of sense, but I do agree with you. I think the acting is pretty solid. I think they really touch on some interesting ideas and aspects, and yeah, generally I still was like enjoying the watch. I was like still intrigued by the watch.
yeah. And like for
Yeah.
all the kid actors, because they had 2 generations kind of kid
Yeah.
actors,
Mm-hmm.
pretty decent, came
good.
together pretty decently. And you're asking those kids to do like a thought exercise that is a little bit more advanced. And whether they fully understood it at the time of filming is one thing or the other, but decently impressive for working with that many kids.
Yeah, I actually think the mom was probably the worst. The worst actress, honestly. I think the kids probably did better. But yeah, so I was gonna give it a 3, but I gotta stick with my code, and I mentioned it before. There were the goth yabos, and then there was like some sorority yabos as well. So either way, we're getting
Yeah.
half star for the yabos.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Good old Thumper, man. He was laying it down. He was going to town, man.
Living up
Good
to
on
his
him.
name.
Yeah. I do
So,
really like that character's inclusion.
I know.
Yeah. All
And you know
right.
what? when I think back on this, that's who I'm going to think about is Thumper.
There you go. Yeah, he's the one who sticks around. So let's hop into Rotten Tomatoes and play a little game real quick. All right, so you're gonna have to beat that house tonight, since it's just the two of us. But I believe in you. I think you got this one. So
Oof.
I'll have the butterfly effect itself, and then I typically try to kind of pit it against three other films that have like the same actors or actresses from this movie. So the first one, round one, is which one do you think is higher? Okay, the butterfly effect or Dude, Where's My Car?
No, God. Is this overall rating or critics versus?
Oh yeah, good call. This is the critics rating. The critics rating.
Hmm. I mean, I love both,
Yeah.
but I am no critic. And I feel like for whatever reason, the critics are not going to be super gentle with butterfly effect.
Okay.
But then the end, Dude, Where's My Car?
Exactly. That's why I was like, okay, all right, gotta make this as
Yeah.
confusing as possible.
That's really hard. I think that Dude, Where's My Car is just scotch above
Okay.
butterfly effect. I don't know.
So Dude, Where's My Car is higher. Okay. And the next one, round two, we're gonna do which one do you think is higher on the critic score? Butterfly Effect or Crank, which Amy Smart was in, apparently. Have you seen Crank?
I haven't, but I feel like I've heard enough about it.
It's that like wild one where I think it's the one where the dude has the battery strapped to his heart or something. Is that Crank? I think so. Maybe.
All
I
of
might
those
be
like single word titles from a certain era blend together for me. But I think
I've seen Crank.
I'll say that one is higher too.
Okay, Crank is higher than Butterfly Effect.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have one more that's gonna have our boy Ethan Suplee in it. Which one do you think is higher? The Butterfly Effect or The Hunt from 2020? Did you see that one?
Oh my gosh, that was like right when everything was popping off with COVID.
Yeah.
I remember my friends over at Bloody Good Horror, like that was the movie they had scheduled for that week. And my friend Joe was like, I'm not going to the theater to die.
Yeah,
see
not
The
for
Hunt.
The Hunt. Yeah.
Oh, that's tough because I remember there was a lot of social pushback on that one.
Yeah, that was the one where like people are hunting people for political.
yeah.
Mhm.
Which, like, you know, we get that in a lot of horror. Like The Purge has notes of that, so it's
Sure.
not necessarily new ground to cover.
Yeah.
But because that one was, so, I feel like it was so loaded, and then it got kind of like missed because of COVID. I feel like I'm going to flunk all of this, but I'll put Butterfly Effect above that one.
Okay. So Butterfly Effect is higher. Okay. So I'm going to run down all these scores. First, I'm going to start with the Butterfly Effect. So
Okay.
out of 172 critic ratings, the Butterfly Effect comes in at 34%.
People learning no.
Oh, I know.
Damn.
Yes.
Is
with
that bad?
yeah, with the critic consensus being the premise is intriguing, but it's placed in the service of an overweight and tasteless thriller.
Tasteless. I don't know.
Yeah, not tasteless, but it is kind of overpacked. I kind of agree with that. Yeah.
Damn,
And
34. Whew.
yeah, but on the flip side, so this is interesting. The audience score though has 250,000 ratings. And it is 81%.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. It's a bunch of people
so
like us.
Exactly. That's pretty much in line with like where we're at. That's our range. So big difference. So I'm glad that there is like a kind of like medium ground. Like there's, you know.
Me too.
I think
so
critics
funny.
could be like gentler to this these days, but
Yeah,
I
like,
don't know.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. You write a better movie then. Whatever.
Pieces of shit. So as far as the game goes, so Butterfly Effect from the critic standpoint is 34%. The first round was Dude, Where's My Car? Which one's higher? You said that you thought Dude, Where's My Car would be higher than Butterfly Effect. But Dude, Where's My Car is sitting at 17%.
No, my goodness. See, and I
Yes.
don't know anything about the way critics in particular view comedy.
Yeah.
So,
Especially
damn.
especially like from that time frame.
Yeah.
When you're looking at older films, you're like, well, how are they
And
judging
nobody
this?
likes anything from that time frame. Like, I also think of like American Pie, and I'm sure like a lot of us look back on that being like, oh my God, it's so funny. Like the first, like, big time sex jokes that we remember. But then I'm sure the critics were like, this is stupid.
Well, talking about from our era, I just was reading in like a kind of post the other day where people were like, do kids these days think Superbad is funny? Because that came out in 2007.
Yeah.
And people were talking about like, no, they don't. Like they
Wow.
don't, it's not relevant to them. And they're like, I don't like get this shit. And I was like, whoa, that's wild.
And that was
Um,
a cultural moment I remember happening.
yeah, that was a big
Yeah.
deal. So
Everyone was like, oh my
that's
God, you gotta see super bad. And then it was like, oh my God, there's dicks everywhere. Like, it's like,
it's not even 20 years old. And like, yeah,
yeah,
kids have already moved on. Woof. Oh man.
that's out.
Time goes by. All right. So Crank, Amy Smart, you said that you thought Crank would be higher. You were correct. Crank
Damn.
is sitting at a 62%, which is significantly higher than Butterfly's 34. Okay.
Got one.
So the last one coming down to it is The Hunt from 2020. You said that you thought Butterfly Effect would be higher,
Oh, no.
but The Hunt is at 57%.
Oh,
So
man.
yeah, not super high, but still higher than 34.
Yeah.
I would much rather watch The Butterfly Effect than The Hunt
Yeah. Come
personally. But nonetheless, the house wins, which means I get a hell yeet. Woo.
on. Hairy.
All right. Cool. We got just one more segment to knock out before we wrap it up, and that's going to be our Cooter of the Week. All right, Cooter is a character type and a straight chillin' exclusive. It has 5 points they have to hit or can hit on to be considered a Cooter. We need at least 3. Kaylin, do you remember the 5 points of Cooterdom? I
You
think
asked me to do this last time, and I was like, good. But it's so funny because when I listen to Straight Chilling, I'm like, Quarter of the Week. And I'm like listing all the points like as you're talking, and I'm like so confident about it. But when I'm on the spot, I'm like, I don't know.
Oh,
Well,
wait.
overall look and attire,
Of course.
sexual deviance.
Yes.
Um, hold on.
It's a no. You got it.
Yeah.
It helps to like
Uh,
picture like the cheatiest person you can think of and be like, what do they do?
Smug
What's going on
arrogance.
with it? Yes.
Yes, smug arrogance. Oh no. Okay, help me with the last two.
So I can't. You said look and attire and smug
Yeah.
arrogance. And what was the other one that you said?
Sexual deviance.
Sexual deviance. Okay. Manipulation.
Manipulation, yeah.
Yeah. And overall patheticness.
Overall, that's what I always forget. Because by the
Yeah.
time you get to overall patheticness, like you've already like check.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you think we have there's gotta be at least one Cooter in the Butterfly Effect. With everything that's going on here, there's
Yeah.
gotta be.
There's like a couple good candidates.
I think so too. Anyone particularly on your mind right now?
But I feel like I'm obligated to be like the child molester father. But for whatever reason, the one that comes to mind first is the frat brother who's like, bro, abuse these pledges. And like that guy, I was like, that's a cooner.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. That he's so that I think it's the same. Like I don't pay much attention, but I'm pretty sure that's the same guy who's like cheating on the test and shit too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like cheating on the test with like so obviously, like, dude,
yeah. Smug
stop.
arrogance. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Look at attire and that like douchey ass, like whatever letters it was. I was like, why did
Yeah.
this look like Lucky Charms made your frat gear? I don't.
Sponsored by Lucky Charms. And they're magically delicious. Yes. Okay. So look and attire, smug arrogance, manipulation. Yeah, with the pledges and stuff.
Yeah.
Abuse.
And also like, I think with, I don't remember how he is with sexual deviance, but I remember when Evan, Ashton Kutcher's character, is like, I want to do something really nice for Kaylee. And he's like, bro, why? Like,
Yeah.
as if like, who fucking cares, bro? And it's like, okay, like he's just here to get laid. We all get it.
I also got this kind of vibe. Maybe it's just me, but I thought that they were kind of hinting at that in that timeline, none of those guys were particularly faithful to their
Yeah.
girlfriends. Like
That's
when
what that
he's in the
conversation gave
shower.
me.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
so too. Yeah, when he's in the bathroom and like that chick is just taking a shower and she's like, "What's up, Evan?" I was like, "Okay, so this is kind of like the negative of this. It seems good, but he's not really happy with Kaylee, and they're
Yeah.
probably all cheating on each other." That was the impression
Oh,
I
God.
got.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought. Okay. Glad I
Cooter
wasn't alone on
house.
that one. Yeah, okay. So probably sexual deviance. I think there's an implied sexual deviance there. Smug arrogance, overall looking attire. What's the other ones?
Patheticness.
Patheticness and manipulation. Oh wait, no, he hits manipulations. He hits
Yeah.
manipulation, smug arrogance, maybe implied sexual deviance, and looking attire. So yeah, patheticness. I don't know if he does anything. Well, he can't
The
like
cheating
fucking
is a
pass
little
a
pathetic.
test.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
come on, dude, come
And he
on. What
also
are you-
can't cheat very well because I was like, bro, you like have it in your hand. Like this is not how you do that.
The old school little crib cheat
Yeah.
sheets, like the little
Yeah.
quarter piece of paper. Oh my god.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he hits. Maybe Tommy too. Tommy might hit cooter status. I would say manipulation. He does the
Oh,
like,
yeah.
gut your family, you little piece of shit. If
Yeah.
you tell anybody. So that's
Yeah.
smug arrogance for sure. He's also like very, very negatively possessive.
He's like
Which,
sexually possessive of his sister. He's like, she's got a tight ass. And it's like,
yeah,
bro, that's sexual
nah,
deviance for sure.
nah, dog. And he's got a couple of realities too. So I would say like kind of maybe overall patheticness with like his, well, this is mean.
Campus Crusader vibe.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna go with.
It is. I mean, like, it's not for me. Like, I mean, like, it may be
Yeah,
out there. Someone's like, that's my guy. That's my type. But for me,
maybe.
I was like, skip
Yeah,
next.
I agree. He
An
does save
amalgamation, though, of like
Evan.
all the Tommies
Hmm.
make a cooter.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, because he's got a sexual deviance. He's like really like lusting after his sister and controlling like who she's around, and even as an adult.
Yeah.
And manipulation and smug arrogance, and I don't know if looking attire. He's just kind of like a kid. He's got his little leather jacket popping.
He's like if you're going to like draw a bully,
Yeah,
you would draw that
exactly.
little
Yeah.
outfit on him. Yeah.
Also, too, like he's like 10 years old at one point. He's like beating the shit out of this like 18-year-old. I was like, "Oh,
At the theater or
maybe,
whatever.
yeah."
I was like, oh, he is dangerous but small.
Yeah. So, okay. I think Tommy and probably too the dad, like you were
Yeah.
saying. I mean, I think if you're molesting children, you ought to screw like the
It's
other.
a sweep. Yeah.
Yeah. You sweep the
You
board.
get
That's
all of
enough.
it. Yeah.
That's enough.
Yeah.
Oof. Okay.
What did the
Nobody.
kid call him? He's like, fuck bag, or I forget what he called him, but like
Yeah.
in
What
every
did
reality where he goes back, he calls him like a fuck face or like a fuck bag or something.
Listen up, book bag. That little kid. That was probably fun for that kid. He was like,
Oh,
yeah,
I
I get to say
love
stuff.
when kids swear. I love it. And especially when like you know that they have this one opportunity and they're not gonna miss it and they like hit it so
yes.
hard every time. I'm like, lean in, let's go. Fuck you, Dad. Like,
Just been holding it in.
yeah. And he's like looking at his parents offset, like it's the script. I
Yeah.
can say it.
Yeah. Yeah. That kid, he does it well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got some cooters. We got them. We got them. Thank you so much.
Cooterific.
Yes, well, this has been a lot of fun. I loved having our one-on-one chats. It's always awesome chatting with you, of course, but you know, sometimes those other boys just get in my way. So
I can't
uh,
wait for our eventual spin-off cast of just me and you doing movies from 2002,
the
3,
early
4, 5, 6,
2000s.
7. Yeah.
Ooh, finally someone to do Underworld with me. Oh, thank God.
Oh my God, I love
I know you
Underworld.
mentioned that in the
Oh.
Slack, and I was like, soulmate.
My brother was We did an episode where I was asking people like, these are the properties I associate with you. Like my brother loves Cloverfield,
Mm.
so and so loves Twilight, and my brother was like, "Oh, Underworld for you," and I was like, "Oh, I'm so touched. I love that stupid ass movie so
I love
much."
Underworld too. I've
Talk about the
like,
blue filter. That whole
oh
series, it's
yeah,
blue and gray, babe.
blue shit. Yeah. There was a lot of that blue going on back in the day. Ooh,
Yeah,
yeah, we'll have to yep our little early 2000s.
yeah. Yes. We'll do
Sounds
Gotham. We'll do Swim Fan. We'll do them all.
there you go. Sounds great. Well, Kayla, one more time, will you please tell everyone where they can check out your stuff?
Yeah, you can find Plug It Up on any of your podcast platforms. If you search Plug It Up, it should come up. It's a big red logo with white letters, and I'm Plug It Up Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and that's where you can find me and send me any cool stuff you find.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to all the upcoming episodes, but all the features as well. You're saying like I got like 5 features going. It's like bonus
I
content.
never stop talking.
Yeah. So yeah, have Caitlin in my ears all week. So that sounds great to me. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on. If you like this episode, you can check out our other ones here on YouTube. You can check out the Straight Chilling podcast, where we do weekly horror movie reviews. This is going to be episode number 7. So we have 6 other creature comforts as well, where we're covering kind of thriller films, horror adjacent films, stuff like that. We have video game rankings and list rankings and all kind of stuff here on YouTube. So check that out. But until next time, don't forget to keep chilling.